In the unforgiving world of professional road cycling, crashes are not freak accidents. They are engineered by speed, wet stone, tire pressure, and split-second decisions. Some incidents decide championships, end careers, or rewrite the rules of cycling safety forever. But what turns an ordinary stretch of road into the site of one of the craziest cycling accidents ever witnessed? And who pays the price next? On the battered pave of Paris Roubaix Sector 12, riders approach at nearly 48 kilometers per hour, wheels skimming the convex crown of the ancient cobbles. The surface isn't just rough, it's shaped to shed water, forming a bulging spine in the center and deep ruts along the edges, carved by decades of farm traffic and racing wheels. In 2023, the first ever women's edition of Paris Roubaix threw the world's best into this gauntlet. The peloton, packed tight and fighting for every inch of line, hit the sector at speed. One front wheel drops into a rut, jerking the rider sideways. The chain reaction is instant. Bikes bounce violently, tires squirm for grip, and a dozen riders go down within seconds. World champions like Elisa Balsamo and Ellen van Dijk are caught in the chaos, their frames battered, some cracked, some bent beyond repair. The sound of carbon splintering mixes with shouted warnings and the grind of bodies on stone. In the aftermath, the group splits apart, favorites delayed or forced to chase, and mechanics scramble to replace ruined equipment. The crash exposes a truth about Paris-Roubaix. On convex cobbles, line choice is everything. A single misjudged path can trigger disaster, even before the race reaches its highest speeds. The sector's geometry, narrow, crowned, treacherous, turns a simple mistake into a highlight reel of cycling accidents. For those who manage to stay upright, the lesson is clear. On the hell of the north, survival often comes down to centimeters and luck. Rain transforms even the most familiar roads into hazards. But when wet cobbles enter the mix, every pedal stroke becomes a gamble. During stage 14 of the 2024 Giro d'Italia, the peloton barreled into Nova Gorica's urban circuit at over 65 kilometers per hour. The finish was fast approaching, but the final right-hand corner, a tight bend paved with slick, uneven cobblestones, waited just ahead. Recent rainfall left a thin sheen across the stones, cutting grip to a fraction of what riders expect on dry tarmac. The physics are unforgiving. The radius of the corner forced riders to lean hard, but the wet surface offered barely 0.3 g of friction, far below what is needed to hold a racing line at speed. 15 riders deep in the group, a single rear wheel lost traction. The fall triggered a domino effect, bikes and bodies tumbling across the cobbles. General classification hopeful Juan Ayuso, caught mid-corner, had no escape route. His group hit the deck or stalled, losing nearly a minute, 48 seconds by the official timing, while rivals like Simon Yates slipped through unscathed. Mechanics scrambled to straighten bars and check derailleurs, but the damage was already done. No one left the scene with broken bones, but the time lost would haunt Ayuso's Giro ambitions for days. Urban cobble sectors rarely feature in Grand Tours, but when they do, weather can upend the script. Unlike the chaos of the classics, where Paris-Roubaix's dry dust or mud defined the day, here it was the invisible threat of rain that turned a routine corner into a cycling accident highlight. For the general classification contenders, the lesson was harsh and immediate. In professional cycling, even a momentary loss of grip can redraw the race's entire map. The peloton faced a punishing combination: slick roads, steep gradients, and speeds nudging 75 kilometers per hour. Rain had soaked the Massif Central, turning the tarmac into a sheet of uncertainty. Even with the best brakes and the most advanced carbon wheels, wet conditions slashed stopping power nearly in half. Rear wheel grip dropped to 0.3 g, far below what riders rely on for control at these velocities. At the foot of the descent, a single misjudgment rippled through the group. One rider slid, losing traction on the painted line. and the dominoes began to fall. Bikes tangled, bodies skidded, and the road became a pileup. Among the wreckage, key general classification contenders like Alexander Vinokourov and Jürgen van den Broek were left unable to stand. Their Tour de France campaigns ended in an instant. Helicopters hovered low, ready for medical evacuation, a rare protocol reserved for only the most severe cycling crashes. Team cars and medics rushed in, but the damage was done. More than a dozen riders went down, with 3 forced to withdraw from the race altogether. The Pas de Payroll crash stands as a stark reminder. On a wet descent, the risk is not just personal. When the peloton is packed tight, a single slip can reshape the entire tour and send favourites home before Paris. Jens Voigt's 2004 Tour de France crash stands out as a lesson in how a tiny slip can unleash forces that no amount of skill can control. On stage 16, the peloton crested the Col du Petit Saint-Bernard and plunged into a descent that demanded absolute precision. Voigt, riding with the general classification chase group, hit speeds estimated at 96 kilometers per hour, nearly 60 miles an hour, on a stretch of dry, clear tarmac. The gradient dropped away at 10 to 12%, and the road narrowed to just a few meters, with guardrails missing in places. Every rider depended on tire grip to keep them glued to the surface. But at those speeds, even the best equipment faces its limits. A micro-slip from Voigt's front wheel, barely visible on broadcast footage, sent him straight over the handlebars. The crash unfolded in a split second, with a race motorcycle trailing close behind and narrowly avoiding a secondary collision. Voigt's face struck the asphalt first, resulting in a fractured cheekbone and a heavy concussion. Despite the violence of the impact, he managed to walk away, bloodied but alive. Medical reports confirmed no fractures beyond his face, a near miracle given the velocity. Forensic analysis points to the overwhelming forces at play. At 96 kilometers per hour, a tire's grip margin is razor thin, and the energy unleashed in a fall is catastrophic. Voigt's crash remains a cycling highlight not just for its brutality, but for how it exposed the ever-present road cycling risks faced by professionals on high-speed descents. Even with perfect weather and the latest gear, the line between control and disaster can be the width of a tire. Sprint finishes push road cycling risks to their absolute limit, but nothing prepared the world for what unfolded in Katowice during Stage 1 of the 2020 Tour de Pologne. With 150 meters to go, the sprinters hit top speed, over 72 kilometers per hour, charging down a slightly downhill, finishing straight-lined with metal crowd barriers. Fabio Jakobsen, riding for Deceuninck Quick Step, surged on the right, looking to overtake Dylan Groenewegen. In a split second, Groenewegen veered left and closed the lane. Jakobsen's front wheel clipped Groenewegen's handlebars, sending him headfirst into the barriers. The fencing, built from rigid metal panels, buckled and exploded on impact. Jakobsen was catapulted through the debris, colliding with a race official and coming to rest against a concrete wall. The aftermath revealed the limits of sprint corridor safety. Standard UCI barriers, about 1.2 meters high, designed for crowd control, but not for absorbing high-speed impacts, offered no protection. Jakobsen suffered massive facial injuries, including a shattered jaw and skull, severe blood loss, and he spent 8 days in a medically induced coma. He required extensive facial reconstruction and months of rehabilitation. Groenewegen received a 9-month suspension for deviating from his line, the longest ever handed down for a sprint infraction. In response, cycling safety protocols changed overnight. The UCI introduced stricter rules for sprint deviations and demanded safer, energy-absorbing barriers at race finishes. Jakobsen's recovery and return to racing became a symbol of resilience. But the crash remains a cycling highlight for all the wrong reasons, a brutal reminder that in professional cycling incidents, the difference between a thrilling finish and disaster can come down to a single meter of fencing. Racing down the Sormano descent in northern Italy, Evenepoel entered a tight left-hand bend at 84 km/h, his bike computer tracking every detail. The telemetry later showed a sudden spike in lateral G-force as he tried to correct his line, then an abrupt loss of speed as his front wheel clipped the low stone parapet of a narrow bridge. In a split second, Evenepoel and his specialized S-Works tarmac somersaulted over the edge, dropping more than 10 meters into the ravine below. The impact left him with a fractured pelvis and a shattered left clavicle, both requiring surgical fixation with plates and screws. Recovery stretched over 5 months, keeping him off the bike and out of racing until the following season. What set this crash apart was the forensic power of modern bike telemetry. Evenepoel's GPS and inertial sensors captured the exact speed, braking force, and trajectory, allowing team analysts to reconstruct the incident frame by frame. This black box approach, once reserved for aviation, now shapes cycling safety discussions. Teams use synced IMU and GPS data not just to explain what went wrong, but to refine descent tactics and equipment choices for the future, proving that in pro cycling incidents, technology can turn raw disaster into critical insight. Egan Bernal's crash in January 2022 stands out not just for its violence, but for the sheer scale of injury and the rapid response it demanded. Training on a straight highway near Zipaquira, Colombia, Bernal was preparing for the rigors of the Giro d'Italia. Riding a time trial bike at 55 km/h, he collided with the rear of a stationary bus, a split-second miscalculation with devastating consequences. The impact shattered his body, with 20 bone fractures, including his spine, femur, kneecap, and several ribs. The force of the collision left his bike mangled and sent Bernal sprawling across the tarmac. Medical teams arrived within minutes, stabilizing him before rushing him to Bogotá's Fundación Santa Fe Hospital. Surgeons worked through the night, performing spinal fusion surgery and repairing his leg, chest, and hand injuries. Doctors later revealed that the crash left Bernal just millimeters from paralysis, a margin so narrow that even slight delays could have changed everything. The recovery process would stretch for nearly a year, with months in a back brace and daily physiotherapy. For Bernal, the accident was more than a cycling crash. It was a fight to regain not only his career, but the ability to walk. His return to racing in 2023 became a symbol of resilience in the face of the ever-present road cycling risks that define professional cycling incidents. Bernal's story is a stark reminder. On open roads, even off the racecourse, the dangers can be just as severe as any Tour de France crash. Chris Froome's 2019 training crash in France stands as a stark reminder that cycling accidents are not limited to the chaos of race day. During a reconnaissance ride ahead of the Critérium du Dauphine's time trial, Froome was pushing through the small town of Roanne, clocking over 54 km/h. As he signaled to his teammate for a noseblow, a wall of wind struck from the side, an invisible force, but one with the power to lift a rider and machine off their line in an instant. The gust caught his front wheel, and within seconds, Froome and his Pinarello tumbled into a stone wall at full speed. The telemetry later confirmed the violence, a sudden deceleration, then nothing. His injuries read like a trauma checklist: a fractured right femur, a broken elbow, multiple shattered ribs, and a punctured lung. Emergency surgery followed, with doctors inserting a titanium rod to repair the femur and stabilizing his chest. The crash ended his season before it began and forced him out of the Tour de France, where he was aiming for a record-tying 5th win. For professional cycling incidents, the lesson is clear. On open roads, even the world's best can be undone by the unpredictable. Wind shear is not just a meteorological term, it is a cycling safety threat that can erase years of preparation in a heartbeat. Froome's recovery would take months, but the impact of that single training day gust rippled through the entire racing calendar, reshaping team strategies and the Tour's competitive landscape. But when order breaks down, chaos follows at terrifying speed. In Nimes, during a Tour de France finale, the peloton thundered toward the line at 82 kilometers per hour, green jersey hopefuls jostling shoulder to shoulder. The finishing straight was narrow, lined with barriers, and marshals struggled to keep the sprint corridor clear. With less than 200 meters to go, a marshal stepped too close to the racing line. A single misstep, but enough to throw the front ranks into confusion. One sprinter swerved, forcing a wave of deviation through the group. Handlebar to handlebar, bikes tangled and bodies slammed to the ground. The sound was sickening. Carbon frames splintering, wheels buckling, and riders hitting the tarmac at highway speeds. Thoracic trauma was reported for two favorites, with medics rushing to stabilize breathing and assess for internal injuries. The jury wasted no time. Officials reviewed slow-motion replays, measuring line deviation against the UCI's strict 2021 sprint rules. A point penalty was handed down, stripping a top finisher of green jersey points and sparking heated debate in the press room. One sprinter, still dazed, told reporters that at that speed, you trust the barriers and the marshals, and when that trust is broken, everyone pays. The race jury stated that deviation thresholds exist for a reason. Without them, sprint finishes become a lottery. The Nimes Pileup did not just end podium dreams for several riders. It pushed the limits of sprint enforcement and forced a new reckoning with how marshal placement and finish line control shape the outcome of cycling highlights. In the world of cycling accidents, a marshal's positioning can mean the difference between a celebrated victory and a career-altering crash. Nothing in cycling history matches the sheer velocity and devastation of the Alula Tour's Stage 3 descent in 2026. The lead group, tucked low and pushing the limits of modern road bikes, hit the downhill stretch at 100 kilometers per hour, more than 60 miles an hour, on a flawless ribbon of desert tarmac. At that speed, every vibration is amplified, and the smallest obstacle becomes a threat. Midway down, a reflective road stud, barely visible in the midday glare, triggered disaster. The front tire of the first rider clipped the stud, causing an instant blowout. The bike snapped sideways, and two others, with no time to react, were swept into the chaos. Bodies and carbon frames tumbled across the asphalt, the sound of impact echoing through the canyon. Race doctors later described the injuries as polytrauma, multiple fractures, deep abrasions, and suspected internal bleeding. All three riders required immediate evacuation, with one airlifted to a trauma center. Forensic analysis, using synced video and onboard sensor data, confirmed the entry speed, 104 kilometers per hour at the moment of failure. The IMU data recorded a spike in lateral G-force, followed by a sudden loss of velocity as the crash unfolded frame by frame. In the aftermath, safety experts called for sweeping reforms. A leading race doctor pointed to the need for stricter road surface audits and the elimination of hazardous studs on high-speed descents. A biomechanist explained that, at these velocities, even a minor tire defect or road imperfection can unleash catastrophic forces. The UCI responded with new rules, mandatory wider tires, reinforced sidewalls, and stricter course inspections for all professional events. The Alula catastrophe forced the sport to reckon with the limits of speed, technology, and human resilience, reminding everyone that, in pro cycling incidents, the margin for error is measured in millimeters, but the consequences can last a lifetime. Every season, cycling crashes reshape careers and rewrite race history, reminding us that professional cycling incidents are never just statistics. As speeds climb and courses evolve, road cycling risks remain stubbornly high, even with advances in cycling safety and equipment. The stakes are real, and the margin for error is razor thin. In this sport, Courage and consequence ride side by side. Share your thoughts on cycling highlights and safety below.